Welcome to the Talk the Book program, which is initiated by Chairman AP State Council of Higher Education about 2.5 years back to inculcate the habit of book reading to the students of AP State, those who are very busy with their academic schedules and the programs, not in a position to go through with the book reading habit. So Professor K. Hemchandra Reddy Garu, Chairman, has initiated this program to introduce at least some of the good books by the excellent reviewers to the students and getting the book review into the technical savvy students to have the information. So this program, Talk the Book AP App Sheet, is being presented today with the English edition. This program is being done every Friday on between 3 to 4 p.m., alternating with the Telugu as well as English books by the reviewers. Today is the 138th episode of this program, and in the Talk the Book program, the book is going to be Relationship. The title of the book is Relationship. Author is none other than the Jayanta Mahapatra, who is an Academy Award winner of India. This book is being reviewed by Dr. Sreekanth Kopuri. Regarding the reviewer of the book, Dr. Sreekanth Kopuri is an Indian poet from Machilipatnam. He is the current poetry editor for the Auto-Ethnographer Journal, Florida, writer in residence, Athens, and a former assistant professor of English in Dravidian University, Kuppam. He recited his poetry in Oxford, Johns Hopkins, USA, Heinrich Heinz, Germany, Keynes, France, Banja Luka, Bosnia, Garsanaki, Poland, and in many universities. His poems appeared in Two-Thirds North, Sweden, Arkansas Review, USA, Expanded Field, Netherlands, Contrapuntus X, Mexico, Untethered Magazine, Canada, and New Ulster, Northern Ireland, and so on and so forth. To mention a few, his forthcoming book from an Indian diary is the finalist for the Islands Book Award 2022 Athens. His book, Poems of the Void, was the winner of the Golden Book of the Year 2022. His research paper, After the Words, won JK Foundation Award. Kopuri was deeply influenced by Jayant Mahapatra's poetry. He is currently a full-time writer and poetry editor. So this is about the reviewer. He is going to review the book, The Relationship, written by Jayant Mahapatra, an Odisha exponent of English in Indian literature. I leave it to Sreekanth Kopuri to review the book. Thank you, sir. You have to start.
Good afternoon, all. Thank you, Akshay, and all the delegates, for inviting me to speak on Jayant Mahapatra. Sreekanth Kopuri, the current poetry editor for Auto-Ethnographer Journal. The book I selected for the talk is Relationship by Jayant Mahapatra. I selected this book because it is one of the most complex defining works of Jayant Mahapatra. The relationship has so many reviews. Now I am going to give some important points. Why I selected this is many research scholars have been feeling very difficult to proceed their research. Jayant Mahapatra is a name to stand by. It doesn't need much introduction. Jayant Mahapatra is a physicist turned poet. Before becoming a poet, he was professor of physics at Ravenshaw University, Cuttack. Jayant Mahapatra started writing very late in life, at the age of 40, but within no time, he crashed into most glamorous poetry circles of the world, and his poems started publishing in most reputed journals of the world like Paris Review, Georgia Review, Tusculum Review, to mention a few. And relationship is a long imaginative journey into the past of Orissa, into its myth, history, and its people. It is a volume of emotions recollected in tranquility. By his lyrical and sublime narration, Jayanta Mahapatra gradually becomes the land of Orissa, and the book Relationship becomes a great classic. My main objective in selecting this book is there are so many scholars now pursuing research on Jayanta Mahapatra, but I got a couple of mails about this relationship to speak on this and to give some access points. I am presenting some doors and windows, the crucial points through which a scholar can access some crucial points. Yeah, there are three unique things about Jayanta Mahapatra. Who is Jayanta Mahapatra? The answer is he's a mythopoet, physicist poet, and a Gandhian poet. So mythopoet is a poet who writes poetry and gives a corroborative narrativity through myths, local myths, and the national myths. So, and he is also a physicist poet. Jayanta Mahapatra, being a professor of physics, he experimented with a lot of theories in physics. So I will come to that later. And he is also a Gandhian poet. He advocates peace. You can see his course of symbolic allusions to Gandhi, Jesus Christ, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Gautam Buddha, and symbolic images like this. So Jayanta Mahapatra is basically a peace-loving man. He's basically a shining man. So coming to physics, no other Indian English poetry has as many allusions from physics as Jayanta Mahapatra's poetry does. He compared the relationship between the poem and the reader with that of electricity and conductor. And according to him, in one of the interviews, he says there are three kinds of poems: uh, good conductor, bad conductor, and semiconductor. Some poems are like good conductor, that means the poem immediately and easily reaches the reader. Semiconductor means the poem reaches only half of its content to the reader. And a bad conductor is a poem which is very complex and it doesn't reach the reader. So, relationship in one way we can say it is a bad conductor of electricity because it is pregnant with force of complex illusions and mythical images and very dense symbolisms. And also another thing is linear and circular movements of time. He represents these in myth of action and sleep. Uh, as I go on, I will explain what is myth of action and myth of sleep. So in that he narrates through the theories of linear and circular movements of time. Action symbolizes linear movement, whereas sleep symbolizes circular movement, which means taking the past as starting point, coming to the present, and moving to the future. So he compared the relationship with the world to centrifugal and centripetal and, emotions. And you all know that in physics, the centrifugal means actually from axis to outward. Centripetal means from outward to axis. So centrifugal force is a poet's relationship with the outer world. And the centripetal force is the world influencing the poet from outside. So these are some unique things about Jayanta Mahapatra. Relationship is basically a bad conductor of electricity. So bad conductor of electricity doesn't mean that relationship is a bad word. It is full of dense encryption of complex imagery, and most of the images are alluring and very teasing. So we read a lot of readings. So basically, relationship is a surrealistic work. So it is very difficult to associate the imagery. Some images are connected to science, some images are connected to psychology, some images are connected to local myths. We do not know local myths except only the local Oriya people know the images. So we have to read all the background to understand the relationship. And next is a mosaic of ideas and experiences. Jayant Mahapatra's poetry evokes John Donne's poetry. It is basically metaphysical. There you can see far-fetched images and a dialogue with God. You can see confrontation with agnosticism. Sometimes he's theistic, sometimes he's atheistic, sometimes he's agnostic, like that. And you can also see a lot of illusions from T.S. Eliot's Wasteland, the picnic paper and empty bottles at seashore and all these kinds of. So there are a lot of illusions from various kinds of myth. Jayanta Mahapatra, Jayanta Mahapatra's personality is a split personality. There are two religions in him, both Hinduism and Christianity. So naturally, you can see a lot of illusions from Bible and also from Hindu epics. So, and all these actually make the work very complex. So why Mahapatra resorted to poetry? Mahapatra resorted to poetry actually for transcendental, philosophical, and autobiographical reasons. Basically, Mahapatra is an escapist, but there has been an allegation against John Keats as an escapist, more for personal reasons. But Mahapatra's escapism had a constructive purpose. He was a sort of poet librarian of Orissa. As such, he wanted to preserve Orissa in the form of poetry. So Mahapatra escaped into imaginative world more for the sake of his land Orissa rather than his personal thing. And the third one is being a physicist poet as well as being a Hindu Christian. He had to confront with many hardships in every phase of his life. And speaking autobiographically, he had a lot of confrontation at home. He had a lot of affinity with his father, and many times in many interviews, he said that he had a strained relationship with his mother. So because his mother was very orthodox and she was very pressing, religiously very pressing on him, and he didn't have complete liberty at home, and he didn't have a harmonious affinity he had with his father. His father was so many times away from home, and he has to be with his mother, and it was a great confrontation with him, as he says. And even at school, he had a difficult time. All the children used to drag him. Even at the age of 90, Mahapatra was very shying man. He was a very soft person. So he was a victim of ragging at school. So in his own words, he says about the wound and sad memory at school. There is inevitably a lot of pain in childhood. I remember mine, and all of it seems so long ago. And yet, the pain, or whatever I choose to call it today, faces quietly behind the breastbone. So it is his sad memory. So why did he write relationship basically? Every poet fundamentally has a responsibility. If a poet doesn't write with responsibility, basically, he's not a poet at all. So he ought to represent the society he lives in. He should be a collective voice of his people. And in this regard, relationship perfectly justifies this objective. So Jayant Mahapatra wrote relationship to understand many things. I have given in quotes. He wanted to understand the forbidding myth, and he wanted to understand the mystery of secret rights. What are those mystery of secret rights, and what is his future destiny, and how he has to collect and portray his land in his verses, and waters of Daya, and slow slopes of stone, which symbolizes the temple of Konarka, and also to empathize with the groans and the cries of the people who were the victims of Emperor Ashoka Kalinga War. There was bloodshed. So he wanted to represent all these things in his relationship, and bring out a classic as a outstanding as a most memorable contribution for his nation. So, what and whom is this relationship with? In his own words, he says tradition might represent many things: the history and myth, the suffering of others. It could be related to grief of others. So he speaks these words in one of his interviews. So basically, the relationship is with the myth, with history, landscape, people, and flora and fauna. You can see his relationship is with the enormous stone, which symbolizes the temple of Konarka, a restless vulture. It is a symbolic. It symbolizes the Emperor Ashoka and his army, and wilderness wood, which symbolizes the myth of Jagannatha, dark chariot of sun. Once again, Konarka granite wheels, and with history, you can see a lot of things. These are the things he wanted to associate himself with: artisans of stone, that means builders of Konarka temple. And, you can see all these. So, and with the landscape, Katakit lanes, Deodar slopes of stone, Chilka to Chandipur, and black labyrinth of Kashurina, old village, owl calls, rivers, mountains, beach, grass, and all this. And with the people, old man curling, ochre-colored prophet, beggars, prostitutes, and people who are dying, and all this. So flora and fauna, I can see these are the things he mentioned in relationship, monsters, flowers, fallen birds, and all these. So now relationship actually opens with a famous epigraph. Perhaps you might have known these famous lines written by Walt Whitman in his classic, world classic, Leaves of Grass. I am large, I contain multitudes. So this is similar to Mahapatra's idea. He also says he large, he contains multitudes of Orissa. So relationship also has a similarity with Manchu Picchu. Manchu Picchu is a classic written by Pablo Neruda. Mahapatra's relationship uh, can almost stand equal to the epic proportions of Manchu Picchu. Pablo Neruda's The Heights of Manchu Picchu uh, also runs in 12 sessions. Mahapatra's relationship also runs in 12 sessions. Both the works are based on the same themes of historical ruins. Manchu Picchu is about tall city of stepped stones, and relationship is about the flight of steps of the sun temple of Konarka. The concepts of journey into the past and a pilgrimage encompasses myths, motifs, and images of their locales. The trail of long journey into the time is obsessed with the themes of death and regeneration. Ruins, stone, and rain are common aspects of nature that emotionally connect the poets to their land and their people. And dual consciousness. In almost all his poems, you can see the dual consciousness of being both a Christian as well as a Hindu. Uh, one of his poems, he gives this image. He says, the sad pigeons perched at the temple arcade. The sad pigeons perched at the temple arcade. So here, sad pigeons is a symbol of Christianity, Holy Spirit, and temple arcade is a symbol of Hinduism. So he wanted to bring harmony between those two religions. He was not biased. So he is preoccupied with both the religions. So there is polar opposition always. When Mahapatra dwells on myth, it clearly evinces the dual consciousness in him, the consciousness of being a Hindu and of a Christian. The polar opposition encounters a matrix of bimythical entanglement. As a physicist by profession, Mahapatra initiates reason into the dynamics of life. As a physicist by profession, Mahapatra initiates reason into dynamics of life and its meaning in the rituals and beliefs of both the faiths. The endless mystery in certain truths of life and the age-old practice of myth transform him into a poet, philosopher, and a human being. The poem Relationship opens with his sincere wish to travel all the way back into the myth and history of the ruined glory of Orissa. It, it is only myth that gives solace from the vultureless, it is from the restless vulture-like passage of time. These are the phrase which he uses in relationship in the first section. He meditates upon palace of enormous stone, which means Shivalinga, which is the myth of creation. The stone symbolizes both the Hindu and Christian religions. In Hindu religion, stone symbolizes a sacred idol of God, Shiva in this context, and it may also be tacit reference to enormous Shivalinga in Bhubaneswar. The stone also connotes Christ figure in Christian tradition, which T.S. Eliot, in his Wasteland, mentions it as red rock. I think we all remember it. It's very famous. Though there is a Christian background in Mahapatra's family, he had a strong belief in Hinduism, and you can see more images of Hinduism in his works. He establishes his Hindu identity as in most of his poems. A retrospective flight. So, relationship is basically a way back into Orissa, past Orissa, its myth and history. So, Mahapatra believes that the stone has power to carry him to infinite distances and can open the hidden secret. Stone is the divine power that creates a strong impact on the poet by continuously stimulating his thoughts and aiding him to travel into the past history of his land. History and legend in Mahapatra's poetry expose our guilt of forgetting the past glory of the land. The forgotten kings of Odisha in 15th and 16th centuries like Kapilendra Dev, Purushottam Dev, and Prataparudra Dev, and ancient kings like Ashoka and Karvel, all these they gave up wars and surrendered themselves to God, embracing Vaishnavism, Buddhism, and Jainism. Today, the poet regrets that the rock edicts of peace have lost their importance and lie waste around everywhere. At times, he becomes indecisive about the stone when he sees death, disease, pain, squalor around him, and people dying, disease, and the elemental vastness around him doesn't give any confidence about his objective. Mahapatra makes a lonely sojourn into the different forms of water. That means sea, river, rain, and also the pluvial streams when it rains heavily. Orissa is Orissa is notorious for floods, as you know. So 1,200 artless brown flowers means actually the great artisans who almost sacrificed their entire lives and all their succeeding generations in constructing the temple of Konarka. You can see in these lines, messengers of spirit, the 1,200 art brown flowers in passion to the night in humble brotherhood. So, this old banyan tree is symbolic of these artless brown flowers, the people who died uh, Kalinga War. The Sun Temple of Konarka was built by 1,200 tireless skilled artisans in 11th century AD at the behest of King Narasimhadev. The generations of these artisans lived and died for the glory of sun god. They were sunburnt in constructing this monumental architecture and became as still as the brown flowers. Mahapatra compares them to aerial roots of the ancient banyan tree, which you can see here, centuries old banyan tree, a bloody landmark which symbolizes the sad cruelties, massacres of Kalinga War, 261 BC, which was which was perpetrated on the inhabitants of the land by Emperor Ashoka. Ashoka was solely responsible for the tragic fate of the royal lineage of Kalinga Empire. But Ashoka embraced peace only after the bloodshed. This is the paradox. The artisans dreamt of legendary Konarka temple but died before their time. So, among the artisans, there is a head artisan by name Visu Maharana. According to the famous legend, Dharma, who is the son of this Visu Maharana, put his efforts to erect the crowning slab of the great temple of Konark, jumping into the sea to save the name of his father, and thus preserving the glory of the land. So this is one of the important myths this is one of the important aspects of history and the people who built Konarka. So many of the poems and epics of literary epics of Orissa, they didn't portray all these stories symbolically and epically as Mahapatra did. Another thing is, Orissa, there are many ports like Kamarlipti and many other ports which are famous for maritime ancestors. And this trade spread to many parts of the world, and many countries got connected to the ports of Orissa. And Mahapatra portrays this event in relationship. The ancient Odisha was known for was also known as Kalinga Desha. It was popular for its maritime trade, which extended in the south to Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Philippines. The ports like Tamar systems